Can people hear me now?
I got you, Sam.
Great, someone can hear me. All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. Today is just one of those days, I guess, with technical difficulties. I'm going to start recording now. On the chat. So please, if you have questions, please use the chat function. Today's webinar is broken up into 3 sections so that people can leave when they need to leave once their section is done. But of course, all of you are welcome to participate throughout the entire webinar. The first is mainly for fiscal and LTCT leads, and then the second is for LTCT leads, and the third part is for new LTCT principals or leads. So without further ado, let's start. Here are the dates for the next upcoming webinars and the dates for our child count dates that will be due in November 2019. So if people want, I can send them meeting invites, but then without the no response required, so to get it on your calendars with the webinar information. I think I might do that because people have said they forgot about it or whatnot. And also for the Title 1D counts, this will account for your upcoming year 2021 Title 1D amount. So please keep track of your enrollment counts on these 6 dates, and information on the surveys will be forthcoming later on. All right, thank you. Any questions on that? Okay, no. The agenda item are fiscal form updates, update on the final federal funds amounts, update on the request for application for ODE application, ODE LTCT funding for 21-23, update on the monitoring schedule for 1921, seeking feedback on suggested statute changes for ORS 343961, which is the LTCT statute, any other suggested items, and then the third part is the new items for new principals, directors are welcome to continue but not necessary, and agenda items. So without further ado, every year I get questions on the budget. So here with your first invoice, this form is due columns E and F are not required because you don't know your 2021 amounts yet. So please just submit the 1920 when you request your invoice in October or with your July payment. Next is our invoicing form. We're asked, we need to ask when you invoice us, you can use this form or you could use your other your school district or ESD invoicing, but if you could have separate, when you request your funds by separate funding sources, like the Oregon funds, IDA 611, IDA 619, Title 1D funds, and Title 1D transition funds. And the Title 1 transition funds are 50 to 30% of your expenditures needs to be for transition or re-entry. So we need to, ODE needs to do a better job of tracking that. And that's how, and when you request your Title 1D funds, these, we have different index numbers for these funds. So, and 611 is for 3 to 21-year-olds and 619 are 3 to 5-year-olds. So now internally, ODE has determined that our LTCT sites might qualify for 619 funds. So sites that do have, you will need to request that separately. Next form is your expenditure report. Here's a summary tab. You would put your Oregon funds in here, your IDA 611 funds here, your 619 funds here, your Title 1D funds, and then your Title 1D transition funds, and any interest if you accrue interest. And hopefully, and I spent considerable amount of time, hopefully they all will roll up into the summary tab. So these are these federal these expenditure reports or fiscal reports are new for this biennial. Next, here's an optional, and this was emailed out to, like, for instance, the Oregon funds will be here, and you can track your IDA 619 title, and then once you put your totals in, your invoice amount, and it'll calculate how much money you have and so forth. So this is a good way to track your payments or your request for payments and how much are available. So for year one, all of your Oregon, IDA, and Title 1D funds can be utilized in year two. But in year two, June 30th, 2021, that's the cutoff date. All funds are not available to you. So this spreadsheet will help you track to tell you how much you are able to spend in these funds. I'm gonna cancel my Outlook. Okay. Any questions on these forms? And all of these were emailed to you? Okay, so for our federal Title 1D funds, okay, someone asked a good question. Do we have to claim federal funds each quarter? Can we claim state reimbursement only? In your agreement, there's a payment schedule, but you are not beholden to it. Some school districts, what they do is some will invoice us for 2 quarters, some will invoice us at the end of the fiscal year. It's up to you. But for your federal funds and your Oregon funds, they accumulate. So if you don't claim your federal funds in first quarter, the amount that was available to you in first and second quarter is still there. So it'll accumulate. It's not where if you don't claim your funds in the first quarter, you lose it in the second quarter. It's still available to you. Oh, and then here's this. 100% of the JDEP and 100% of the LTCT sites have submitted all of their 1719 invoices and forms. This is, I think, one of the few first biennial where I don't have to chase after people to submit their eighth quarter invoice. Thank you for that. Because if you don't submit your invoices for eighth quarter for the previous biennial by September 30th, there might be a chance that our funds are not available. But it's a good thing that 100% of the JDEP and 100% of the LTCT sites have submitted all their eighth quarter invoices for the 1719 biennial. So again, so for the 21 biennial, all invoices need to be in by September 30, 2021. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to go on. So federal Title 1D funds for the 1920, we should be having that soon. IDA 611 soon, but 619, that's going to be a little bit more delayed because of the fact that it's a new fund available to us, and ODE is having still internal discussions regarding it. So the amendments that will finalize your federal amount will be a little delayed, but as soon as I have the Title 1D funds at 611 funds, I can email everybody so you know what you have a better picture of your funding for for 1920, but 619 might be a little bit more delayed. But as soon as I have that, I'll send it out and then I'll initiate the amendments to finalize the agreements with the actual 1920 amount. Any questions on that? No? Okay, good. So that's pretty much all the fiscal related questions. So if fiscal people want to leave, that's fine. Okay, so Title 1D, so someone asked the question, Title 1D transition funds, are they part of Title 1D funds? Yes. So let's say your site has $100,000, 15,000 to 30,000 have to be used for Title 1D. So for transition, so it's carved out. So it's like you're not going to get an additional 15 to 30%. Okay, good. Any other questions? Okay, so here is some demographic data from 1819. I felt that it would be pretty interesting for everybody. So for these are the disability counts for our programs in our unit. YSEP, a good number were other health impaired, ED or specific learning disabled, JDEP, same thing. But YSEP, for LTCT, a good number was other health impairment and ED. So the students in our LTCT programs, which is justifiably so, have different disability codes for their primary because of the type of kids that we have. Most of them are not delinquent. We should be all serving mental health needs. So I think this is some interesting data that I felt people would be that might be interested in. Demographics. For JDEP, YSEP, the gender, there's more males in YSEP than JDEP. And what's interesting is for JDEP, if you look at the American Indian was 4% and African American is 7%, but when they go to YSEP, OIA, the percentage for Native American increases to 7% and the African American increases to 10%. And here are the percentages. For 31% of JDEP kids were SPED, 43 for YSAP. Then for LTCT, 43% were SPED, 6.5% were Section 504. And for gender, for LTCT, it's pretty much 43 female, 56% male. But if you look at the race ethnicity, predominantly it's white. Hispanic, and Native American, Asian, African, and racial. Okay, so I'm checking the chat. Okay, someone asked if I could share a document of sample Title I re-entry activities to share with other teachers. Most definitely, I'll send out. NDTACT has a transition services document that. And NDTACT stands for Neglected and Delinquent Technical Assistance Center. And I'm taking down notes that I will send out the transition toolkit. I'll send that out. Yes. Any questions about the demographics of LTCT students? Okay, somebody asked how do they compare overall to the overall state numbers. I don't think ODE has sent out the 18-19 overall enrollment demographics yet, but it's safe to say, especially for JDEP and YSEP, students of color are higher in our systems, and especially for LTCT. So, and what I don't have, and which I do know that is unfortunately true, is I think in LTCT we may have a higher number of LGBTQ students than the general population. Once this past spring, I was at an LTCT site, and that LTCT site had 2 classrooms. And those 2 classrooms, every single student except for one student was a person of color, and 75% of the students in that LTCT site were of the LGBTQ community. And when I talked to them, some of the students felt that they just were not safe at their K-12. They felt they were pushed out, and they did have mental health needs and so forth. So that was a shame when I visited that site. So any other questions? Okay, I'm going to continue. Now onto the proposal. This is our statute for being eligible, and we're going to go into now transition to the 21-23 ODE LTCT funding proposal. So this is our statute. Day treatment you have to have mental illness and emotional disturbance, provide services, residential treatment, mental illness, and then to be an eligible day treatment for ODE LTCT funding, you have to have a contract with OHA. And then for eligible residential treatment, you have to have a contract with OHA, DHS, or OIA. And here's our OERs. So last spring, I went around and asked for feedback and input for ODE LTCT funding for the 21-23. I gave a short history of the Christie's list where ODE was funding sites based on an old list, and I communicated that we wanted to change for 21-23 because there was inequity and there's a tremendous need to support students. And based on the feedback, already heard the comments and feedback from stakeholders. So instead of, and this is the important part, instead of a competitive process for 21-23, if your eligible day and eligible residential treatment program qualifies that meets the minimum requirements, ODE will attempt to fund all eligible day and eligible residential programs. It will no longer be a competitive process. Shelter programs, group homes don't qualify, and it's a paradigm shift of what can before our mentality was what can we afford, but now our mentality has switched to if you meet the qualification because the need is there, ODE would try to attain the funding to fund all eligible and residential treatment programs. I'm looking at the chat. Okay, someone asked, are we digging into why the percentage of students of color in treatment programs is so much lower than those in JDEP, YSEP? I have my theories, but it's my understanding, similar to JDEP and YSEP, the educational programs, I don't think you have the final say on the intake process. It's the intake process is determined by the mental health provider or the treatment providers. So for instance, like in Lincoln County, Lincoln School District will service all the kids that enter into Olala Day Treatment Program, but it's Olala Day Treatment that determines who enters. So yeah, and as far as and as I and well, and I'm sure Adam observed it too. As I monitored and went around the LTCT sites last biennia. All of our LTCT sites strive to serve all students of color equitably. So I'm looking at some of the chat questions. Someone said sigh relief. Someone said hooray. Someone asked, will we still need to do an application or not? Yes, all sites will still need to do an application, and that is because I need to know who's out there, who qualifies. So it might be like where someone that is currently being funded for 1921 that is on the Christie's list may not meet the qualifications of being a DN eligible residential treatment because they may have ceased their contract with DHS, OHA, or OIA. Um, and their licensure may have expired. So, yes, an application is still required to receive ODE funding for 21-23. Um, and the applications, I met with our procurement people yesterday. They should be posted in ORPN. And ORPN is the Oregon State procurement system. And once it's posted, I'll send an email blast and hopefully the sped director email blast and so forth. Oh, here's an important part. Please listen to this part. Yes. Because it's no longer a competitive process, if a site has questions or needs assistance completing the application, I'm more than able and willing to assist with that. Before, when it was a competitive process, I couldn't help with the application process because it would give an advantage over site A or site C or whatever. So we will, once the application is out, if you have questions, I can assist with that. And the draft application was submitted was not submitted, but was emailed out. The deadline has not been determined yet, and the reason why the deadline has not been determined yet, it will be determined when it is open on ORPEN. For instance, like I don't want to say January when if like ORPEN we can't get it in by November or whatnot. So it'll depend. Like hopefully once it's posted on ORPAN, there will be 60 days for people to submit the application. Another question. Oh, shoot! I skipped this one. Someone said her concern is lack of access to appropriate and culturally responsive mental health providers for communities of color. Yes, that is a concern. And when the site at Youth Villages closed, that was run by the education program that was run by Clackamas CC closed, they had a unit for Native American youth where everyone in that particular unit was of Native American answer they're identified, and their treatment was with the perspective of the Native American culture. But once that unit has closed, I don't know of another unit within Oregon that specifically addresses Native American youth. So that is a concern, and I'm sure our partners at OHA are aware of that. So a question from chat: if an ESD is providing services on behalf of its component school districts, will the school district or ESD complete the service plan? Okay, the service plan will be has to be completed by the educational provider. So for instance, let's just say like for instance like Southern Oregon ESD is providing the service at Family Solutions Grand Pass and not Grants Pass School District, then Southern Oregon ESD will have to complete the service plan, but the application for 21-23 funding will have to be with Grants Pass and Family Solutions. Any other questions? So remember now, it's no longer a competitive process. ODE will try to find the funding for all eligible residential treatment programs in 21-23, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And I've said this before, I've showed these before, but I'll do it again. So this is, as I go around, I take pictures. So this site would not qualify because it says homeless runaway transitional living shelter. You know, it doesn't state day or residential treatment. This licensure clearly states state treatment. And what's good about it is their expiration date is 2020. This does not qualify because this is outpatient substance abuse and outpatient mental health. This site got a whole bunch. This site does qualify because they got a letter from OHA stating that they provide intensive treatment services from OHA. Residential, but the thing about this was their licensure had expired. This was issued 2015 and it expired in 17. So when you do your application, like if you could take a PDF or like a photocopy of a current licensure. Any other questions before I go on to our next agenda items? Okay, going on. Okay, so the monitoring schedule for 1921, we will do all current LTCT sites in 1921. We will no longer stick to a 3-year cycle. It would be a 2-year cycle. And as I previously mentioned, part of it is because we need to evaluate or monitor each contract cycle. So it will be for all sites will be for 1921, and I'll come up with a schedule for everybody. So most likely the site, and then most likely sites that reviewed last year will be in the second year and so forth. I'll divide everybody into year one and year two. And the service plan, it'll be in Google Docs, and I'm still working on it where everybody will have access to, I mean, not every, you will only have access to your service plan template. And once it's in Google Docs for the 21-23 biennia, you just have to update it and you don't have to email it or whatnot. So that way, and that suggestion was made by LBL ESC. They had that wonderful idea, like for instance, for some documents that we do every biennial, if you could just put it online where people can just go in and update it instead of having to reprint out everything. And I thought that was a great idea from LBL ESD. So Surface Plan that'll be our first attempt to see. So the service plan template is here. It says LTCT, and it was emailed out and so forth. So once I get this into Google Docs, I'm going to create one for each individual LTCT contractor, and then I'll put your name, the school name, institution. So it's one service plan per institution number. So that'll be in Google Docs, and then I'll email out a specific link per site. Next, suggested statute changes for 343961. It's become, we realize that there's certain parts of our statute that needs to be adjusted. For instance, for B, the statute language, can people see the statute language? Should I make it larger? Hopefully you can see. So in yellow and in red, these are some of the changes that we want to add. For whatever reason, when the statute was done for LTCT, eligible day treatment was only for if you had a contract with OHA, but some sites have contracts with DHS and OIA. So if your eligible day treatment program has contracts with also DHS and OIA, you would also qualify. The way the statute is currently written, it's only if you have a contract with OHA, Oregon Health Authority. So that's something that we'd like to change. Next, this has been a real stickler where I think in 2013 or 15, this was added into the LTC statute where the resident school district have to provide transportation to the day treatment program, and the transportation is before and after school. But there was no mention or a statement saying that they may submit reimbursement to Oregon Department of Ed for transportation costs. So we're going to try to get this transportation being provided to day treatment programs during non-instructional days to also qualify for the transportation reimbursement. So during the school year, it's not a problem, but during the summer or during breaks when day treatment was in session, some school districts were they're unhappy that they had to provide transportation but couldn't claim reimbursement with ODE when there's no educational services happening. So that's something that we're going to try to address. And also, we want to add the department shall base the funding on a ratio of staff to students per classroom adopted by Rural State Board of Education. In 2015, we had the budget note that went away from slots or the number of students to the minimum staffing where we are funding sites on classroom. So we wanted to put that into statute because the budget note expired, but we wanted to ensure that it's perpetuated. And number 7, we wanted to, we feel these are no longer necessary about the timing of the invoices and so forth. So any questions about this? About suggested sample language? Any objections? Any suggestions? Any thoughts? Okay, so there's none in the chat. So I'm gonna go on, continue. So that concludes the second part of the webinar for experienced LTCT sites. Next, I'm going to go into the for orientation for new LTCT principals and directors. So you're more than welcome to continue to stay on, but it's not necessary for those that are experienced, but you're free to. All right, thank you. And you have the PowerPoint. So, all right, thank you. So I'm going to now to the next part of our agenda orientation. So for LTCT, for new principals, this is how we get our funding. Our funding for LTCT is there's two ways of receiving it. Is revenue for oh darn, it's actually for 1921. We have gotten 16.3 million in general funds, and the other part is slot count capacity times net operating expense. That's another part of our state school fund amount. And that amount is from here. If you look here, this is the document that's posted on ODE's website that's normally for every single school district. LTCT and our state schools, we get our funding first, like the 4.4 billion. Then after that, then the school districts, they divide up. So my concern is, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, right now at 12.5 million, it's not that much of a people don't notice it that much, but if it jumps out to 40 million, people might notice it and say, wow, that's a lot of money that's being taken out of the state school fund. So that's the reality. So if we do increase the number of LTCT sites, the drawdown from the state school fund will increase, which means there'll be less funding for school districts in the K-12 system. Okay, so someone asked, what does a staff to student ratio mean for the minimum staffing level model? What that means is the minimum staffing level model means is we provide funding for one teacher, 2 EAs plus 15% for overhead for classrooms that have 1 to 15 students. If you have 16 to 19 students, then we provide you with a third EA. But once you hit 20 students, then you may qualify for a second classroom. So you would get funding for 2 classrooms, 4 EAs, and 15% of that amount. So someone asked, what does the staff to student ratio mean? So that's the ratio for LTCT. But our OERs and the budget note allowed us to deviate from that formula in case for safety and treatment needs, in the cases of treatment and safety needs. And here's an example. In Dallas School District, there's Polk Adolescent Day Treatment Center, Paddock. They have about 17 or 18 kids. So with a minimum staffing level, that would be in one classroom with 3 EAs, but we provide funding for 2 classrooms because one classroom is for middle school and one classroom is for high school. To have middle school and high school kids with high behavior needs of a ratio of 18 to 1 is just not safe. So that's why for that site, we provide funding for 2 classrooms. So we work with each site depending on the treatment and individual safety needs. And also, because of our minimum staffing level, we are away from counts because, like, for instance, let's say your classroom has you have a slot capacity of 12, but you average 4. By that ADM level of 4, there's no way that you're gonna generate enough state school fund to for the teacher and the EA. So that's why the minimum staffing level is beneficial for sites that have low numbers of students in each classroom. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, going on. And it's prorated because and I don't know of any educational program that is fully funded, or adequately funded. So currently we are funding the LTCT sites at 71%, not 100%, because of limited funding. So, and it might be for next year. I don't know how much it'll be. So it's year to year. And if you have emergency fund requests, let me know, and then we have a form that you need to complete. And then emergency fund requests are such as, let's say, like there was a fire, and you needed to replace the textbooks, computers, and equipment in the room. So that would most definitely um, equate to emergency fund requests. Things that are unanticipated. Oh, and also, if let's because of our funding is tight, suppose you have a teacher that goes on maternity leave or goes on FLMA, all of a sudden you have to pay the salary for a long-term sub and the teacher on leave. Let me know and we'll try to work things out to provide you additional funding for situations such as that. Because I know our funding is very tight. It's just for one teacher and 2 years, but there's some instances where you need to have funding for additional teachers in cases of maternity or FLMA or other things such as that. So we have that fund request. Any questions on those? Next, ADM. When your educational program reports ADM or LTCT students in the fields of resident district and resident school, it needs to be 3559. Then the attending district is your school district or ESD institution number, and the attending school is LTCT site and tuition type F. It's because we're already getting our state school funding via our agreement. So if deviate this, there could be a possibility of double dipping or the site receiving ADM funding from two sources, which is a big no-no. And our state school fund unit will get red flags that show up. So please adhere to this when in the fields when you submit your ADM. Our agreement or contract, it is a biennial agreement. It expires June 30, 2021. And then all of the activities and expenses have to be before June 30th. It's like, if suppose there's a conference in July, you want to pay for the airline, the travel, and the conference fees in June for the July. That is not allowable because it had to have been completed in June. So the school district, they get to decide whether they want to provide the educational services to ESD or another school district. So every biennial we send a letter out, and the school districts will notify us if they want to do it or if they want an ESD to do it or a neighboring school district. And throughout the biennial, we provide amendments to adjust funding. So what normally happens is in March of the previous year, we provide estimates for the upcoming year and for the IDA and Title 1D, and those are just estimates. And once it's finalized, then we do the amendments like in September, October for the actual amount. For Title 1D, there are two data collections that we have to do, and they're very important. One is the child count Um, and then there are two different online surveys. The first survey, I'm going to ask you for your enrollment count on these 6 dates. Then the second survey, once one of the 6 dates has been determined, and the way I determine it is I calculate the date with the highest number of kids on enrollment. So, such as, let's say it's April 24th, then I would send out a second survey asking for the names and SSIDs of the students that were there on April 24th from everybody. So and then that'll be your count for the 2021 school year. Next is, and then this normally goes on in November after USDOE sends us the final CSPR requirements. And then they ask for demographic data, credits, diploma, work experience, pre-post test scores, and so forth. So that's another survey that's done pretty much every November. Next, let's go learn. Right now is our Let's Go Learn is our system-wide assessment tool that we use for JDIP, LTCT, and YSEP. Administered once every 6 years. If you don't have a login or password, let Julie Clements know, and we'll get you a login password. And the way the federal requirements state that all kids that receive Title I funding have to be pre and post tested. And we got approval if we use the same assessment measure or tool that a site's a site's post test can be another site's post test and pre-test so that they don't have to be tested. Because we had kids that were leaving a facility on a Tuesday, entered another site on Wednesday, and they were taking tests, and kids were saying, wow, we just took a test, yesterday. So it's online where if you know the student's name, birth date, or SSID, you can look up their testing history. So to alleviate the over testing of kids. Next, transportation. The statute right now says the school district where a student is a resident is responsible for transportation to the day treatment site before and after school, and also during summer break or when school is not in session. Next, discipline. It's recommended that when you suspend or it be handled via the LTCT program institution number, not the neighborhood school. Like we have some LTCT sites that are in the school building. Instead of going through the school administration, we recommend it go through the LTCT program and administrator to help alleviate some of the wrinkles and headaches that come with it. Also, suspensions are allowed, but they're very uncommon. It's only for like extreme circumstances where safety and danger of students or staff have been compromised. And of course, when you for IDA eligible students, manifest determinations need to be conducted. And with our high number of SPED students, most likely you need to do that. Restraint and seclusion reporting. So if the mental health provider does the restraint and seclusion, then the school district does not have to report it on the ODE restraint and seclusion data. But if the educational staff does it, then it needs to be reported on ODE's data collection for restraint and seclusion. What we're trying to provide is the double counting of the restraint and seclusions. Next. Oh, this is a double. Any questions? Now this is the end towards our last part. Any questions on anything? And in reality, this is what happens. As soon as I end the webinar, I'm gonna get phone calls or I'll get emails. This always happens every single time I do a webinar. So, but if you have questions, now's a good time and to ask them because your peers on this webinar may also have that same question and the response might be helpful for them. Okay, so someone asked, can you define mental health personnel? Okay, that is very simple. Like for instance, um, who's the employer? If the mental health professional is employed by the school district, then it would be on the ODE's website. I mean ODE's data collection. But if the person is employed by such as the Family Solutions, then it would be on Family Solution. So like who is the employer? Is the employer the school district or the mental health provider? Another question: shall we assume our dollars will be somewhere similar to last year, so we can proceed with purchasing now for our classrooms? Um, for Title One IDA and Title One D and IDA, that's always based on counts. But for the organ funds, which is a huge part of your funding, I would assume because I looked at our carryover estimates, and I think we probably would be. I don't foresee a drastic drop, but instead of 71, it might be 69 or 68, or it might be a little bit more. So I don't see a tremendous drop in funding for LTCT for 2021. But for 21-23, that's a different story because we have a lot more LTCT sites. A lot more LTCT sites will be dividing up that 16 that general fund amount. But we're going to try to get more general fund amount in the 21-23 biennial. Other questions? Okay, can you quickly repeat ratio of staff? And actually, I can even bring it up because I do know we put it in OER. Hopefully, you can see my screen. LTCT. Here's a funding formula. So, is this big enough for people to see? Hopefully. Um, one teacher and two instructional aides up to 15 students per classroom for 15 to 20. And if there are more than 20 kids, you get an additional. But then here, as I mentioned, staffing levels may vary from this guideline for safety, student characteristics, or treatment needs. And this is OER 581-015-2572. We didn't put this, like it's not part of our statute, but it should be, so that's part of our simple language fixes. Someone asked, can we get the version of the data on demographics for who is enrolled in programs that you showed? I think I emailed the spreadsheet, but if you're asking for individual students and their SSIDs, I can't email that out. I emailed out the demographics. Oh yeah, so someone said no, if you email the spreadsheet, then fine, thanks, yes. And the reason why, I don't know if yeah. Um, yeah, it's really, it involves a lot of confidential data when I did that spreadsheet. So I can't email that out. Any other questions? Well, if there's, oh, someone just put in another question. Good. If we have to wait, if we have a wait list sufficient to open another classroom, would that number have to be another 10, or we have to have one in class enough for 5? Um, we would have to have a discussion. We would have to have a discussion, and we do have a form to fill out whether you want another classroom or not. So we would have to have a discussion, and I can email you. I can email the requester the form, but we need to have a discussion. And then for this year, we are adding 3 classrooms because the tremendous need for placement. We have a site at Win Watts where uh, a unit will be repurposed, so that'll reopen. In Grants Pass, Carlos will reopen a closed, and in Spring in Lowell School District, Jasper Mountain is currently constructing a new building to increase their students. So they will need 3. So those 3 sites will need 3 classrooms. Any other questions? No other questions? Okay, thank you everybody for participating. And as always, if you have any other questions or comments, feel free to email me or give me a call. Thank you everybody and have a good day.